Hi, I'm Ian.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast where we bring you the actual ghosts
with the actual stories
from actual bears. On this episode of Ghosts and Bears, we're talking about ghostly animals. Sometimes wild, sometimes old pets, and oftentimes terrifying. Coming up on Ghosts and Bears. Well, hello, my friends. You are going to be delighted in the fact that I'm by myself. No, I'm just kidding. Jason is at school. There's just no getting around it. He has been working really, really hard. We are making big changes, and he is just totally caught up. As you know, he got a new job, and we've sold off all our extra real estate, making no money, and we are just trying to simplify our lives. But one of those things is Jason is committed to doing this whole school thing for another year. So when we were coming down to it, and I'm like, we really got to record, you wanted to do this every 2 weeks thing as well. He was getting a little bit panicked, and I said, you know what? I can do it on my own. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's basically like doing a ghost walk with a mic in a small, cramped room in the basement. So pretty much the same thing. What's been going on with me? I have been working on my PG Ghostly Walks route. People in this community are amazing. They're so generous with their time and their information. So I'm going to have no shortage of ghost stories for downtown PG. Prince George, by the way, Northern BC. You can Google it. And because it is a town of only like 90,000 people, I think there's definitely more hands-on involvement from people, and they're excited to see something new. So I have all my merch just for me, not to sell. I got a backpack and a t-shirt and a light jacket because I'm only going to be doing this in the summer and October. And I think I'm kind of almost ready to go. I need to walk the route. I need to nail down which 10 stories I want to do. But you are welcome to go. This is my first time announcing this. If you want to check it out and give me feedback on my website for this, I would be so grateful. You're just going to go to pgghostlywalks.com. So literally PG, the letters, pgghostlywalks.com. Go there, check it out, see what you think. Tell me if I'm missing anything, because when you make something and you're too close to it for too long, you can't really see. So if you see something really glaring there, let me know what you think. Or if you just like it, let me know what you think. I, for one, am in love. If you look at it on a PC, you get to the homepage and there's this like animation behind the words of these three ghosts just hanging by ropes with little feet hanging out. It's a little dark, which is kind of what I'm going for. So we'll see how that does. I'm only going to do it for the last, like the Friday, Saturday in June, last one of the month, and the same thing for July and August. So only one of, two nights per month. And then I'm going to try and do Friday night and Saturday night every single weekend in October. And we'll see what happens. I'm open, if it completely fails and no one shows up. All right, at least I tried and I have a cool jacket. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited about that. Calgary's Most Haunted, just finished the copy edits on that. Thank you to my faithful copy readers who went through and found all my mistakes and sometimes just the typesetting errors that happen. They went through there and did that for me, so thank you to them. Sent that back along with my acknowledgments for the end of the book. So I think that is the hard work done. I get the copy of it back from the publishers one last time before it goes to press, just to make sure everything's right and I'm happy with everything. Well, as happy as I can be. And then it goes to press. So looking forward to the launch of that in October. Going to be doing... I have 2 weeks off in October, which we had pre-planned. So I think I'm going to go to Calgary. Jay and I will go to Calgary and do a book launch at a bookstore in Calgary. And that will be really fun. Hopefully the publisher can find me some press people to talk to. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. But that'll be really good. So that's exciting. And then I've started mapping out Canada's most haunted, which is really cool for me as I'm my first jump into going national. Terrifying. Absolutely. Puts you on a whole different level and a scary level because people are meaner when you try and go a little higher in that level. But that's okay. I can handle it, I think. Maybe. Sure. Yeah. And that'll be fun. So I'm looking forward to doing that and jumping into those stories and starting to talk to people and going back in my history to when I've been to many of the places I'm going to write about. I'm trying to avoid all the big famous ones, but I really want to highlight the differences in the province and how, even though we are all different across Canada in a way, we are still tied together very much by the paranormal. So I think that'll be really fun. Other than that, I'm just working my work and doing my job and keeping on. And, Moby's great. He's 12 now, little dog. He's stubborn as ever. Randy becoming more lazy every day. So that's great. Exactly what a cat is supposed to do. And we're just, keeping on. It has been a year as of the end of April that we moved to Prince George. And I'm glad. Honestly, I didn't really know. I was absolutely going to give it my 100% and see what it was like and how I was going to like it. And it's great. Honestly, I love living in a smaller community. It's got all the benefits and access to resources as any larger community I've lived in. And it is just so much easier to get what you need and to get where you're going and not battle with traffic and be super close to nature. In the last 6 weeks, we've seen probably 4 moose roaming around and at least 5 or 6 bears. Like, it's so cool. And one thing I will say, though, the deer here, a little scary. They look like they could mess you up pretty good. The deer in Vancouver Island were like these kind of like almost ballerina of deer. They were like smooth furred and very delicate with their tiny little stick-like legs. And the deer here, they got fur hanging off them. They're about 5 times the size. The deer in Victoria would, they'd look at you and run away. These deer just stare you down like, yeah, you come at me. I gotcha. So that's pretty funny. But on the whole world's waking up from winter, and it's just really, really nice. We're all doing really well up here. So there's a little brief upkick for me. I can't think of anything else exciting going on in my life. I'm just not that exciting of a person. You may remember on the last podcast, we talked about tomatoes. I got my first tomato off my little studio tomato pile. And I'm currently looking at about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tomatoes that I pulled off this little shrub. And there are more on there. So yeah, I would say studio tomatoes, success. And I'm very excited about that. It all started growing in here because I needed a place where Randy would need it. So, in a way, it totally worked. But yeah, so that's fun. We've got plants growing in seed trays for going outside pretty soon. So I'm excited about that. And things are good. As I said, Jason's sorry he's not here, but he really did have to be. He goes to school all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So he's there from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it's a lot of work. So, anything I can do to support him, like taking this off his plate, I'm willing to do. That being said, we are going to be talking about ghostly animals. And I don't know if you've ever had your own experience with this. My closest one would be when my childhood dog passed away. And, you're never really sure if it's just them like coming back to say goodbye or check in on you, or is it just your brain sort of replaying the noises and sensations that you experienced the whole time they were alive? I don't know. Some of these are absolutely involve pets. Some of them, not so much. So, think back to pets you've had. Have they come back to you? That's a great question. And I would love to know the answer to that. In the meantime, I'm going to be right back with some wonderful stories about ghostly animals. All right, and here we are back talking about ghostly animals, and I've got a few stories here for you, and I hope you enjoy them. It's they're a ride. The first one is called The Night Panther, and anything with the title Night and or Panther in it is going to be awesome. Before I lived where I do now, I used to live in a neighborhood in the suburbs of Alabama, specifically in Crestwood. The house was not really old and had been built in 1963 or thereabouts. From what I remember, we really did not have any other kids in the neighborhood. It was full of old folks. My grandparents on my father's side lived about 3 houses down opposite of the street. I was probably about 5 years of age, maybe older, but definitely no more than 7.5 because that's when we moved. The house had an addition to it, dubbed the playroom downstairs, that myself and my younger brother were never fond of going into by ourselves, especially at night. Creepy feelings, but nothing ever happened in that room. I've always considered myself a practical person, even when I was a child, but what I'm about to say is absolutely true to the experience I had. It only happened once, but it was terrifying. One night, it must have been during the summer, I was lying in my bed, hot, uncomfortable, and unable to sleep. I don't remember the time, but it was pretty late. I remember getting up and going into my parents' room and climbing into their bed where a ceiling fan was on. I got between my mother's and father's legs and was lying on my back. At the bottom of the bed, there's a footboard. A thick post ran across the bottom slightly above the mattress. This is where I would often prop my feet up to press with my foot against it. I was lying in bed for what seemed a while. The ceiling fan above me was on, and I was aware of my surroundings. Still restless. The 2 pull strings on the fan used to turn up the speed and turn on the fan light when clicked, and they were clicking together. I remember just staring at its movements, thinking to myself, I wish they'd stop clicking. Not sooner after, I hear a noise at the foot of the bed. I look down and see a black panther gnawing the post, seemingly try to get at my foot. This thing was as clear as the nose on my face, and I remember the yellow eyes. I was so terrified that I had a loss of breath and remember that I had consciously taken a breath to scream. I let out a blood-curdling scream that shocked both my parents awake. Frantically, I climbed back up and started towards the headboard between my parents, keeping my eye on this thing. My mother started screaming, and my dad shot out of bed, turning on the lamp on his nightstand. And the second the light went on, that figure just vanished instantly. My parents were shaken by the sudden awakening, obviously, and I was crying, terrified at what I had witnessed. I explained what I saw, and my mother and I stayed in bed. I clung to her like glue, and my father cautiously checked all around, but saw nothing. It took a lot of convincing, but I was shown that there was nothing there. My parents to this day chalk it up to a nightmare that I was absolutely awake, and I told them so. This was so vivid and terrified me so much that it's been kind of hard to forget 30 years later. To this day, I cannot explain exactly what that was because it looked and sounded like a living, breathing Black Panther. But the fact that it vanished the way it did with no trace has me absolutely stumped. The doors and windows were all shut. Nothing was in there when I left my room and went into their room. This thing was there one moment and gone the next. Longer than 5 seconds. I absolutely don't have any other explanation besides paranormal, but I never saw it again. I don't spook really easily, and as a kid I loved trying things like the amusement park haunted house. I would even position myself at the bottom of my bed so I could look into my parents' bedroom off the reflection of the mirror to watch late night TV. Tales of the Crypt fascinated me, but it never scared me, so I don't think that had anything to do with it. All right, so the Night Panther. Yes, no, nightmare? What are we thinking? I don't know. I mean, when you have something like that happen and it just seems so real, I absolutely understand that, you can't really dismiss that because it does feel absolutely real. And maybe in that moment that something was trying to scare this kid and that's how it showed up. I don't know. But yeah, kind of weird. I don't know. Moving on to our next one. This one is called What Did the Dog See? What does the fox say? No, that's something else. Okay. This is an incident that happened to me when I was about 17 years old, around 1980, give or take. Timelines start running together as one grows older. That's for sure. But the details of this story are as fresh as the afternoon it happened. My father, being in the military, was stationed at the large Air Force base in San Antonio, Texas at the time. My parents had purchased an older home in a long-established neighborhood close to the base. Over the 4+ years we lived there, there seemed to be some strange occurrences that happened off and on. To set up the foundation of the story, I will highlight a couple of things that have happened that lead up to my interesting experience some 42 years ago. On a side note, there is supposedly some history surrounding the old neighborhood, i.e. the land was a field hospital for the Mexican army from the siege of the Alamo. But anyway, that could be just a story. The garage to the house was converted to a play/living room by the previous owners, but my parents wanted to turn it into a bedroom for my younger sister, who was 5 at the time. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Make the garage bedroom for a 5-year-old. Sorry. No judgment. She walked into the large room, took one look around, and stated she would not sleep in the room. When my mother asked why, she pointed to the back corner of the room and said a man hanged himself there. Then she left the room. Wow, that is a fun 5-year-old to have at parties. Other things that happened included a woman that seemed to visit my other sister in her sleep regularly. One night when my parents were in bed, a large crashing sound came from the kitchen, like all the cabinets had flown open with all the dishes crashing to the floor. But when they went to investigate, there was nothing amiss. Other times, books would open on their own in front of people, and for me, only 2 real things stand out. One was I woke up from a very sound sleep by something, and as I was waking up, I saw a solid black figure standing or bending by the head of my bed. Needless to say, I was instantly awake and swinging my pillow at it. By the time I was fully awake, nothing was there. I could never be sure if that it was or what I saw was something I just imagined as I woke up, but something caused me to come out of a very deep sleep. We had 2 dogs that were very protective of the family. One was a full chow, and the other was half chow. His name was PT. PT was well known in the neighborhood as a very aggressive watchdog for the house, family, and backyard. Oh, they were those people. Occasionally, he would escape from the backyard, but he would be happy. He'd be happy-go-lucky as only he protected his property and his family. He was a very aggressive dog within his boundaries. Case in point, my father tried to give him to the canine Air Force canines for a working dog, but they refused as he was too aggressive. Yeah, this sounds like a great dog to ever run kids. Sorry. Like all outside dogs, when they both came in the house, they were very happy, and any time the door was open, they would not hesitate to run into the house if invited for scratches and snacks. This is very important to keep in mind for the upcoming incident. One early afternoon in the summer, I was home alone. And like most teenagers on the weekend, without much to do, I was just lying on the couch watching TV. I could not even tell you what was on, but I do remember that the house was very still. Not something I noticed then, but looking back after it happened. With just the TV providing any sound. All of a sudden, there was a huge, sharp bang on the back door, with PT barking and hitting the door again and again, wanting to come in. The dogs had never done this before, and in fact, having enjoyed the company of a number of pet dogs, I have never seen this type of behavior before or since. My initial thought was someone was breaking in at the back of the house, through the window. But we had bars on the windows, so if someone was breaking in, I should have heard them. Plus, it was early afternoon. That was my young reasoning at the time. So I opened the back door, and PT ran past me without even looking my way, not even stopping for a pet or a snack, just zoomed by me to the front of the hallway. Jess, the other dog, was on the back porch, whimpering and running in a circle. Again, I'd never seen this behavior before. PT had run around the corner to the top of the hallway leading to the back bedroom's bathroom when I heard him growling like a bear, deep and menacing. I tried to get Jess to come into the house, figuring 2 dogs is better than 1, but she refused, and I could not even pull her inside the house as she locked up her legs and refused to move. Hearing PT growling but not barking, I carefully made my way to the kitchen so I could peer around the wall and see what was going on. Figuring the back door was open if I needed to run, and there was a dog between me and who or what was in the hallway. I looked down the hallway and there was nothing I could see. I did notice it was quiet, except for the continuous growling, and it was darker in the hallway, like a gloomy day, but only outside the sun was shining bright. PT was standing there with all the hair on his back straight up and his tail straight back. I did not know what was going on, but in either an act of bravery or stupidity, I was a teenager, so it could go either way or a little bit of both, I walked up to PT again, figuring he would protect me if something came down the hall. I called him, and he would only glance at me as he had to keep watch on whatever he was looking at. I tried to pat him, and he paid me no mind to my hand other than to take a quick look to ensure it was my hand. I then proceeded to walk down the hallway, looking in the 2 bedrooms on the side, the bathroom, and the bedroom at the end. Everything looked fine. I didn't see any broken glass or anyone for that matter, and I didn't notice any cold spots or feel any touching or anything like that. In the past, the dogs loved to come back to the bedrooms to play and get petted, but PT refused to even come down the hallway at all, even after I called him. He seemed to be looking straight through me. He just kept still at the front of the hall, with his legs in a ready-to-attack stance and that deep from the belly growling. I tried to grab PT's collar and drag him down the hallway, brave, which he fought by digging his paws into the rug. He just locked his legs but kept right on looking past me at whatever he saw. When I called him and tried to pull him, PT would give me a quick glance, perhaps a hard plead to leave him alone and get out of there quickly. So deciding that it might be time to head for the great outdoors and wait for the rest of the family to return, I started towards the kitchen and opened the back door, when all of a sudden, the dog quit growling. I looked back and it looked like he came out of a trance. Just a happy-go-lucky dog wagging his tail and wanting a scratch. At the same time, Jess came into the house, as always, like nothing was wrong. Nothing had happened. But as a final point to this story, as PT started to walk away from the hallway, he stopped and looked back down it, which seemed to be not as dark, gave a hard, deep growl that lasted a few seconds, and did the things that dogs do when covering up something bad. He used his back legs to kick out down the hallway, like he was throwing dirt down that way. Afterwards, both dogs were their playful self. Oh, goodness. Nope. I would not be sticking around. The minute that dog was giving me those signals, yeah, I'd be out of there. I really do truly believe that animals can see far more than we can. They're just way more plugged into that and have a lot more uncluttered instincts. So yeah, if either my dog or my cat starts behaving in a different way and aggressively towards a point, I'm done. I had a friend who had a dog who every single night, this dog, easygoing, sweet as anything, her hobbies included like sleeping and licking people, like just a sweet, sweet dog. Every night she would, around between 9 to 9:30, 9:45 sometimes, she would get up, walk to the far corner of the living room to a chair that was tucked beside the TV, and she would sit there and stare at it. Sometimes she'd whine, sometimes she'd whimper, but she would just sit there and stare at it for that entire time. And you could call her and you could, nope, not interested. She would literally just sit there staring or whining or whimpering at this chair. It was the freakiest thing. And I was over. I saw it myself a few times. And I said to my friends, I'm like, what do you think it is? And they're like, we have no idea, but we don't sit in that chair. Which seemed fair. Our next story, the red-eyed dog. That doesn't sound like a friendly dog at all. All right, let's find out. My whole life, I've loved scary movies. I have a brother a few years older than me, so it's safe to say I was watching them at way too young an age. Combined with the fact that I had a very overactive imagination, I was scared of everything. The Grudge was hiding in my closet. The clown from It was in the shower drain. Freddy from A Nightmare on Elm Street was hiding under my bed. As an adult, I've been able to write off most of my more unusual experiences and memories as simply a child getting worked up over shadows. However, there's one memory in particular that I cannot for the life of me explain away. It's my earliest memory. I had to have been about 2 years old. I was young enough that I still slept in the crib in my upstairs nursery, with my parents a couple rooms down the hall from me. To clarify, I was too young to have really seen any scary media, and my mother was quite protective of me with those things until I was a few years older. I wasn't the best sleeper, and I'd frequently wake up during the night. I remember being uncomfortable, alone at night in that room. I assume that's true for most young children. Not scared necessarily, just uncomfortable. When I woke up this night, I remember tossing and turning, playing with my blankie, and overall just hanging out, when all of a sudden I looked over through the bars of my crib and I distinctly, vividly remember a pitch black shape with glowing, deep red eyes. It stared directly at me, and I remember feeling the breath on me. I screamed, cried. My dad came in, picked me up, carried me to the hall, and calmed me down by pointing at all the different parts of a painting that hung in the upstairs hallway. I remember counting the apples in the tree with him as he comforted me. When I tell people my earliest memory, it's just of my dad coming in and taking me out to that painting to comfort me. I don't mention the pitch black shape staring at me through the bars of my crib. To be honest, I've tried to write it off for a long time as a dream. I got to thinking about it recently, though. I was only a couple years old. I didn't know what scary stories were. I didn't understand the concept of death or ghosts or demons. I was pretty voraciously sheltered until I was about 5 or 6 when my brother started in with the scary movies. Is it normal for babies to dream things like that? I know there's the old internet fact about only being able to dream of faces you've seen before, not being able to create new faces. I don't know if that's actually true or if it even applies to shadow creatures, but I know I wouldn't have seen anything like that as a child, so either I conjured it in my imagination or maybe it was something real. In the above section, I only wanted to include what I distinctly remember, but there are more things from that night I believe happened. They're just a bit more fuzzy. I clearly remember the glowing red eyes and pitch black shape. There were 2 windows on the opposite wall, and I vividly remember the moonlight streaming in through them. Before one window, the one on the very right, was mostly obscured by the black mass. The fuzzy part is that I remember thinking that it was like a dog, but I don't remember if it was the shape of a dog or just a black mass at about large dog height. I also think I remember it making a low growling sound, but that could just be my imagination. The nursery was remodeled into a guest room when we got older, and after I moved out for college, that became the room I'd stay in any time I visited. To this day, I cannot sleep in that room without a light on. I'm still uncomfortable in there, and my anxiety spikes at night if I have to sleep there. I've looked into black dogs, demon dogs, and death omens, but I don't believe that anything happened around that time. My grandpa would have lived another year or so, and he's the only one that passed away when I was a kid. No major life changes either. Just the memory of a big black dog with gleaming red eyes. Urgh. That reminds me, if you ever saw the movie The Never-Ending Story, which was pretty much a humongous source of trauma for most of the children my age, there was that wolf who wanted to eat the world or who wanted the nothing to destroy everything. He scared me, that dog. And I got him in my head as a picture when I was reading that story. So, yeah, I'm going to just blame it on him. I can't remember his name. Was it no, what was his name in that movie? I don't remember. Someone will tell me. You guys are amazing at that. Next story. My mom's poodle. Ooh, sounds scary. No, just kidding. Although I've experienced paranormal events, great and small, all my life, I've never written them or discussed them openly until I felt compelled and safe to do so. People don't treat the topic lightly, and some get very upset. If it meets the approval of the readers here, I will share some of those experiences. Please be gentle in your comments. It's my first attempt, and I'm feeling rather exposed and vulnerable about this endeavor. Yeah, you know what? This is true. People absolutely hesitate before sharing their ghost stories because no one wants to be ridiculed. No one wants to be, doubted or made fun of or mocked or put down or called names. And so people don't talk about ghost stories. Like, I barely even think about that anymore. But I can remember when I wrote my first book thinking, well, this is it. Everyone's going to know I'm a weirdo now. Yeah, like they didn't before. Anyway, here we go. Please enjoy Squidgum's story. That's the name of the poodle. In 1974, my mother's birthday present was a white toy poodle she named Squidgum. Oh, that poor dog. I have no clue why. Squidgum was a cute but highly strung little thing. Of course he was with that name. He was also distinctly my mother's dog. He didn't tolerate us kids at all. He was mean, snappy, snarly, growly, and prone to biting any one of us simply for walking near him. I can honestly say I never did anything to earn his wrath. I can't say the same for any of my 4 brothers. Of course, if they got caught teasing him, my mom would grab the paddle. Squidgum's favorite pastime was to sit on the porch with my mom and watch the neighborhood. We lived in a quiet residential neighborhood that saw little traffic and was a great place to raise kids. 5 years after she got Squidgum, she left him on the porch and went inside to get a drink. This part comes from my mother. She told me after I got home from school. She'd just gotten her drink when she heard a pop, and then Squidgum yelped. He was bleeding and yelping, and she called my dad. They rushed the pup to the vet, but he died there from the shot of a BB gun. Oh, no. Who would... Ugh. She never told me where he was injured, never told me about the blood and how it had poured and pooled around him. Never told me how he tried to lick his own wound, and I was too young to hear that kind of gore. Oh, I don't care how mean the dog was. That's not okay. About 2 weeks later, I was sound asleep in my bed when an odd sound woke me I couldn't place. It sounded like a whimpering and a dog licking its paws. I was curious, but not really concerned because strange things are a norm for me. I've always slept with a nightlight, not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because of what I can and can't see in the dark. Being afraid of the dark and being afraid of what's in the dark are two very different things. I sat up and looked to where the sound was coming from. Squidgem, white fur almost glowing and a red glistening stain spreading along his left side, was curled up almost in a cashew shape. He was licking his left side and there was a spreading pool of blood under him. Oh. I froze, literally paralyzed with terror. I had seen things before, but mostly shadowed or in a kind of transparent overlay. But this, I knew him. He wasn't a shape, shadow, or strange face. Squidgem looked real, like he was bleeding out on my bedroom floor. Like I could touch him. I was so terrified I couldn't even scream. I could barely even breathe. The last thing I remember hearing the air whistle in my lungs as I fought the fear. I have no memory of what happened after that, but I think I might have fainted. When I woke, there was no sign of the dog or blood. I didn't tell my family. I put it out of my mind, and it never happened again. At a family dinner about 7 years later, Squidgem was mentioned. And that's when I was told that Squidgem had been shot on his left side, and that when my mom laid him down on the floor to call my dad, Squidgem had crawled into my room and had actually died there, not at the vet's. My oldest brother said he'd been the one to clean up the blood so I wouldn't get freaked out. I relayed to them what had happened, the details, and my mom told me that she'd heard the same sounds coming from my room but thought she was hearing things. We let the matter drop after that and played a game of hearts, but I have to admit, I stopped by my old room and said a small prayer. It was much too late, but I hope. Aw, poor Squidgem. I know he wasn't a very nice dog, but yeah, no one deserves that. That's not okay at all. All right, our next story. Ghostly help. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, I'm just trying to make it scarier. I was in college when I joined a mountaineering club. We planned a trip to hike a mountain that's said to be mysterious among locals in a neighboring province where my college was. There were reports of strange lights at night near the peak and some sort of partying noises despite having no power up there. But I just ignored these reports as myths. There were only 2 hikers' trails that were really steep in most parts. There's no way you could get a generator up there or vehicles. Our mission was to scale the mountain within the day. We had no plan to camp overnight. We started the trek very early morning so that we could reach the summit before noon and be in the clear before sundown. We only had a quick lunch up at the top and began descending as soon as we were done eating and getting a bit of rest. It was fun, however. I was the only freshie and everyone there was in their senior year. My buddy was one of a trio of noisy besties, so she would walk with her friends instead of me, but she was ensuring I was still with the group. I did not complain, but it stayed that way even during the descent. I was very happy with the view, the sense of being one with the wilderness. I was awed by everything, fascinated by the sounds of colors, until I realized the sound of chit-chat had grown fainter and further. And then I realized I was being left behind. My friend was not paying attention. I knew I kept up with the phase, and I thought they were just close by, but I made sure I could hear them no matter where my attention was, but it was not enough. By then I was panic-stricken. Even if I quickened my pace, I couldn't find them anymore. I decided to run faster while descending, that I stumbled, skidded, and tumbled down into a not-too-deep ravine, my face hitting an overgrown root of trees below. It didn't hurt, but it was quite a shock. I stood up and climbed back up to the trail. I ran again, this time trying to be more careful. I strained, but I still couldn't hear them. I was completely alone. The sky was beginning to appear orangey. There were birds flying into the trees from somewhere. Bird calls grew louder and more diverse. The wind blew cooler air. I felt a bit scared, but I tried staying level-headed. I went through a rather wide gap between 2 high walls of red earth. It was long and windy somewhat. It was like a mini fjord without water, like a deep ramp that I can skate from one side down and up towards the other. I was still amazed, but I was being gnawed by worry. My feelings weren't helping, especially when the path ended in 2 forking paths along the opposite direction, although both sloping downwards. I looked, not sure what to take. Panic hit me more than once, and I couldn't focus on the signs to check and track which path they took. I was in the kind of dilemma when at the end of one of the paths, a white dog appeared. It did not show its whole body, but it was looking at me, and then it left. I went after it. I walked on, and there were more twists and turns, and every time I hesitated, the dog appeared at the end of each trail, looking at me, as if urging me to follow it. For some reason, I kept running to where it had disappeared. I kept trusting it as a sign. This went on until I could hear my fellow hikers again. They didn't even know I'd been missing. I got mud all over, and they just smiled at me and went on with their lives. I never saw the dog again until we reached the foot of the mountain. I looked back, thanking the white dog in my mind, who guided me out of the woods. Ooh, that's like a cross between third-person syndrome and a ghostly dog. That's pretty cool. I mean, there's plenty of stories where it's like the forest is just actively trying to kill you. And I've certainly read enough of those in my time. I'm sure there will be more, by the way, because they are terrifying, especially when you live in a city that is literally surrounded by forests. But no, that's kind of cool. I'm glad that that dog was there and that the person had the wherewithal to trust it, because it could just as easily have been a dog who was, I don't know, trying to kill them. I don't know. Murder dogs. I don't know. Next story up. Demonic Doberman. Aren't they all? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Don't hate me. They're not. They're lovely. I mean, slightly murderous, but this story takes place in a town just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. When I was a child, my mom was a single mom. My sister and I and my mother lived at my grandparents' house. It was a smaller house, so we had to share a room and a king-size bed. The house was older, and so we always heard strange noises. I even remember my grandmother would joke about the strange noises and claim they were her ghost friend, George, and it made us laugh. But just about every night I went to bed scared. We would hear scratching on our floors, like a dog scratching the hardwood floors, except we didn't have a dog. We heard these scratchings and walking sounds almost every night. We could even hear it breathing and panting. This went on for a while. One night after we had gotten settled in bed with the lights out, I was looking out the window, when all of a sudden a swirl of black smoke formed from the window and floated towards the floor, where it formed into a Doberman. I stared at this dog as my heart dropped and every hair on my body stood up. I was absolutely paralyzed with fear. Then the Doberman starts to walk towards the end of the bed, and I can hear those familiar nail taps on the floor, as I'd heard many times before. It walks to the dresser that's in front of our bed and puts its two front paws on the dresser and looks in the mirror, and I can see its eyes staring back at me. The eyes are red and glowing. Then it gets down and starts walking around towards the side of my bed. I buried my head under my mother's arm, and I didn't move until the very next morning. At that time, this happened when I was 6 years old, and I never told anyone what I'd seen, and I never saw the ghost dog again. Some years passed, and I think I was about 13 years old when I decided to tell my sister about what I saw that night. She looked at me and paled and told me she'd seen the exact same thing that night. So then we went to my mom and told her our story, and we figured she'd think we were crazy, but she looked at us speechless. Then she confessed she'd also seen this demonic-looking black Doberman dog in our room that night. So curious, I asked her, "So where did the dog go after I hid my face?" She told me that once it came around to my side, it just jumped through the window and went out. I felt a big relief, knowing I wasn't crazy and they'd seen it also. My mother told me later about the people who lived in the house across the street from us. She told me that sometime in the 1960s, the family that lived there, mother, father, and son, and the mother took her son trick-or-treating. It was Halloween, and when the mother and son came home, they found the father hanged, along with his 3 Doberman pinschers. Ooh, not good. Restless spirit of a murdered dog that doesn't know it's dead. Oof. I mean, it's not like the Doberman did anything mean to them. It was just kind of hanging out and checking things out, which, fair. But interesting, the dogs felt like they could just walk around other people's houses too, because usually they tend to like to stick to their own family. But I guess after a few years, you get bored. It's not all murdery dogs. It's sometimes cats that show up. And that is absolutely our next story. I'd never had anything paranormal happen to me before, but I've always had an interest in things like ghosts. I never would have guessed that my cat would be the first paranormal experience in a long line of strange and odd things that would happen over the course of 3 years. It was June, and I just turned 13. My birthday hadn't been anything special. My family was in the middle of moving. I was pretty disappointed with my birthday, so I went outside to walk around and just forget the whole day. It was late. The sun was setting, so I didn't leave the yard. And after a while, my brother ran outside, saying my mom wanted me to come inside. As I walked back into the house, I noticed that the door that leads outside, but also has the basement, had been left wide open. This wouldn't have been a problem, except our cat had gotten out because of this. Our cat was a gray tabby. She was fat and had been kept inside her whole life. Same. To keep her safe from the neighborhood dogs in the busy road next to our house. I went inside to check for her, and she wasn't anywhere to be found. There was no place for her to hide because the house was empty. The only reason my family was still there was because my mom wanted to clean it before we left. A few days after this, we still had not found her, yet we could hear her. My dad and I both could hear quite clearly a cat meowing. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then my dad asked if I'd heard the meowing. And it was strange because it sounded like it came from the air itself. My dad checked the basement walls, thinking she may have gotten stuck in them somehow. Only she'd never, in all the years we've had her, get in there or even try to get in the walls. You could even hear her outside, but you could never really tell where it was coming from. A week later, on the last day my family was in that house, my mom and I were cleaning the kitchen. I was sweeping by the basement door, not really thinking about anything at all, when all of a sudden a deafening meow right in my ear. I screamed because it surprised me, and I suddenly felt like she was waiting or to be let inside, and she knew we were leaving. My mom asked what was wrong, and I asked if she'd heard that, but she didn't hear a thing. The last thing I did before we left was open the basement door and hold it for a few seconds, hoping she would come in. She must have, because no one has heard meowing since then. On the way to our new home, my mom told me she'd seen a dead cat on the road that looked like her. I never once felt scared or in danger, even though I knew it was a ghost. This cat had been loving, and I knew she'd never hurt me. Yet that wouldn't be the last time I'd have encounters with something I couldn't explain. Aw, that was a nice story to end off on. Ghostly cats who just want to, wander and not be fat and go outside occasionally. What's that like? There you go. So there's our ghostly animals. If you have any ghostly animal tales, I'd love to hear them. Send them on in. And we're going to talk about all that stuff when we come back. So stick with us, and there's a bit more to come on Ghosts and Bears. All right, and we're back. Well, me, I suppose. Any other presence lingering in the room with me. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too much of a blow to not have Jason join us. But, he's got to do what he's got to do, and it's not forever. It's just for now. So we're going to go with that. We are really grateful for our patron listeners. Some of you have upgraded your memberships, I noticed, since we went back to going twice a month. So I'm grateful for that. That's an amazing way to say thank you and to let you know you appreciate what we do. If you are thinking about becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month, we'd be grateful. We have the Bear Admirer level at $5 a month. And for that, you do get all the fun benefits, including Ghost Stories We Have Heard, which comes out every week. We don't put out an episode. So those are really fun. And some of them are a little scarier than some of the stuff we do in here. But I think you'd really enjoy it. So check out our Patreon, Ghosts and Bears. And we are there and happy to see you. If you're having trouble finding it, just go to the website, ghostsandbears.com, and all the links are there. There's the links there for the Patreon. There's links to email us or send us a message. There's our merchandise store, the Redbubble merch store, if you'd like to have a beautiful shirt with our very cool logo on it. There's also merch with with my book covers. I got to add the Calgary one though. I just got the cover for Calgary and I really like it. So, maybe you live in Calgary and you're like, hey, I got a cool shirt with Calgary on it. Or maybe you live in Edmonton and wished you did. Nah. So yeah, please check that out and see what you're thinking. And also follow us. We're on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm posting more on Instagram now than I was, simply because life honestly is getting to be a little more manageable and a little more balanced, which is why we are coming back to do 2 a month, back like we used to. And also, I want to just thank everyone for sticking with us. I really do. I hope you are enjoying the episodes. If you have feedback, love to hear it. Seriously, send it in. Best way to do that, email. I know, old school, but I can keep track of it that way and respond to you more effectively. So hit us up, ghostsandbears@gmail.com. It's literally just ghosts and then the letter N and then bears@gmail.com. And you can use that email to get in touch with us, to say I love this, or I don't like that, or fix this, or shut up, or I had a weird story and here's what happened, which we love. Please send in those stories because we'd love to do another episode of listener stories like we have in the past. And yeah, all those good things. We're just really grateful that you're there and you're listening and you're having a good time. So we want to make this a safe space for people to be able to talk about their ghost stories and be able to talk about things that have happened to them. So keep that in mind and do that. All right, friends, I think we have reached the end of my the stories for this week. And I am in the middle of recording some audiobooks for friends who have written books and do not have the fancy equipment that we do. And I'm more than happy to do those books for them because I love doing it. And I'm going to be working on that after recording this. And I also have some more Ghost Stories We Have Heard episodes to produce because you people just can't get enough and time marches on. So I'm going to be jumping on those as well. But thank you. Thank you so much for all your support. As I said, we do have our supporters who support us so well. And I want to say a big thank you to Michelle, Taylor, Dawn, Robin, Maria, Gina, Sherry, Marion, Kathleen, Alexa, Mary Frances, Christopher, David, Ashley, Jeremiah, BB Nix, Melinda, Jordan, Tammy, Taya, Evan, Arwin, Steve, Kyle and Charlotte, Catherine, and Mari. You guys, you make my heart happy. You're so kind. So yeah, keep in mind, we've got those different levels. Bear Admirer. The next level's Pet the Bears. We've got Ghost Bear Acolyte of the Sacred Cave, which obviously is cool. And we even have the Bear Appreciation Society. So all of these things are available to you. And of course, they do come with those lovely bonuses of the t-shirts, the coffee mugs, the stickers, all with our logo on it. So keep those in mind. We'd love to have you join us in that community because I do get to talk about other stuff there. So, just saying. Thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks with a new episode. Take care. Bye.